The New York Times reports Education Secretary Betsy DeVos is deciding whether to allow states to use federal funding to purchase guns for teachers, saying it could improve school conditions. This would be a dramatic shift in policy breaking from how funding is distributed for school safety, which comes from the Department of Homeland Security. The Education Department's press secretary tells NBC News, quote, the department is constantly considering and evaluating policy issues, particularly issues related to school safety. The secretary nor the department issues opinions on hypothetical scenarios. And as a senior administration official says, no decision is imminent. Joining me now is Fred Guttenberg, gun reform advocate and the father of Parkland shooting victim Jamie Guttenberg. Fred, good to see you. Thank you for being with us again.
You too.
What do you think about this as a parent of somebody who has been a victim of gun violence in a school? What do you think about teachers with guns and about taxpayer dollars being used to purchase them?
You know, I think Secretary DeVos is using the murder of my daughter to provide a return on investment for the $30 million that the NRA and gun manufacturers paid to get this administration to office. But the money they spent to do this does not necessarily result in good policy, and this would be terrible policy. What Betsy DeVos is saying she wants to do is remove money from a program that was designed to support additional education initiatives and mental health. The first thing people like Betsy DeVos or the gun manufacturers and the NRA do when there's a shooting like the one that killed my daughter is they say, look at mental health. And now they want to take the money from mental health to put guns in schools, arming teachers. I have no problem with armed security.
Right.
But somebody tell me how it's going to work arming a teacher. Where's the gun? Is it on the person? Because that's a problem. Or is it locked away? And if it's locked away, how does the teacher get to it when somebody's walking around with an AR-15 like happened with my daughter?
Right.
Are they spending time fumbling nervously for a key to open up a lockbox? Not protecting kids who need them in that critical minute?
Right. So teachers have said to us many times that, look, A, we're teachers. It's a different set of skills than a security officer or a police officer. B, our instinct is to protect our kids first. And C, because we're not well trained at these things, nor do we necessarily wish to be, a teacher, we've had teachers say to us, what if it's a fellow student with a gun? We are going to think 9 times before shooting that person because our instinct is to protect them. What if another student gets injured in the commission of trying to shoot somebody with a gun? There are a lot of reasons teachers have given us to say there's a problem, but we are not equipped to be the people to shoot shooters.
Allie, everything they do is designed around the fact of, listen, she had this conference last week. She looked parents from Parkland and Santa Fe who were there in the eye and said, we're taking this seriously. But she would not allow the issue of guns to be discussed at this press conference. In fact, there were several speakers who wanted to mention guns, and they had to wipe it from their prepared remarks. So it couldn't be discussed last week as a factor, and it couldn't be discussed as a potential factor going forward, but now they're going to roll this out on us today. It's a terrible idea, and they know it. And the problem is, if you don't deal honestly with the issue of guns, you're going to start throwing Band-Aids at a much bigger problem. So, okay, we do all this stuff now to, let's say, arm teachers and everybody else. What do we now do with all those thousands of kids who walk into and out of a school every day? They'll now become the new sitting ducks if we don't deal honestly with the issue of guns. Arming teachers is a terrible idea.
So what does success look like, Fred? What does it look like? When you say let's deal honestly with guns, what does that look like to you?
Well, first things first. Let me tell you, everyone who says we need to deal with mental health and we need to actually secure schools, I totally support and agree with them. The problem is there are those who want to stop the conversation there, and I don't. We also need to deal with the issue of guns. It's not an either or. And we need, number one, look at what we did in Florida. We raised the age to 21. If you do that, you remove the access of emotional kids who are not yet making mature decisions from having the access to guns that they might then do something with. How about red flag laws? Okay, they have already saved lives here in Florida. They've been used a lot to remove weapons from someone who intends harm. They are working. How about background check system that it works without the loopholes and without the garbage? How about a real waiting period? So that we give emotional factors a chance to dissipate before someone can go run out and buy a gun. There are so many things we can do that just make sense.
So why spend our time on the ones that don't?
And what this Secretary of Education, who should care about education, is doing is saying, let's pull money from educating to buy millions, to buy all these weapons to throw at teachers who don't want them. Listen, my daughter died in school. I still have a son in school. This so enrages me. And what this does is this makes for certain this November election is critical. And everyone should go to this election making the issue of gun safety in this country the number one issue that they vote on. They should make it an orange wave in November, because it is the number one issue that they're going to be voting on. This administration is trying to, while Trump throws out a new tweet every hour, I call it the Trump dog biscuit, they're doing real policy things that are impacting people and not in a positive way.
Fred, thanks again for being with us. Thanks for all the strong work you're doing in the memory of your beautiful daughter. She would be very, very proud of the fact that you and all the others associated with the Parkland community will not give this fight up so that other students may live. Hey, MSNBC fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down there and click on any of the videos here to watch the latest interviews and highlights. You can get more MSNBC for free every day with our newsletters. Just visit msnbc.com/newsletters to sign up now.